Hello, I'm Mr. Ed.
A horse is a horse, of course, and no one can talk to a horse, of course. That is, of course, unless the horse...
Hello, good beans, and welcome back to Midnight Requiem. Today we'll be talking about Bamboo Harvester. Was the American saddlebred / part Arabian horse that portrayed Mr. Ed on the 1961 to 1966 comedy series of the same name. Followed in 1949, the gelding was trained by Will Rogers' protege Les Hilton. He was born in the Los Angeles area, but sources disagree as to whether his birthplace was El Monte or a harvester farms in Chatsworth, California. In 1968, 2 years after the cancellation of Mr. Ed, at the age of 19, Bamboo began to suffer from variety of age-related ailments, including kidney problems and arthritis. He was euthanized in 1970. A second Palomino horse named Pumpkin, which had posed for still pictures used in press kits for the show and some personal appearances, survived until 1979 after Bamboo Harvester's death. The second horse was unofficially known as Mr. Ed. By 1968, Bamboo Harvester was suffering from a variety of health problems. Controversy surrounds the story of his demise, and there are at least two separate versions of what happened, both from plausible sources which might reasonably be expected to have the correct story. In one version, he was euthanized in 1970 with no publicity and buried in Snodgrass Farm in Oklahoma. However, a different version was given by Alan Young. Young wrote that he had frequently visited his former co-star in retirement. He states that Mr. Ed died from an amphetamine tranquilizer administered while he was in retirement in a stable in Burbank, California, where he lived with his trainer, Lester Hilton. Young says Hilton was out of town visiting relatives and temporary caregiver might have seen Ed rolling on the ground, struggling to get up. Young said Ed was a heavy horse and he was not always strong enough to get back on his feet without struggling. The theory is that the caregiver thought the horse was in distress and administered a tranquilizer, and for unknown reasons, the horse died within hours. The remains were cremated and scattered by Hilton in the Los Angeles area at a spot known only to him. In this version, it was a different horse that died in Oklahoma in February 1979, which widely thought to be Bamboo Harvester, but instead, this horse was merely one of the pose for the still pictures of Mr. Ed used by the production company for the show's press kits. After Bamboo's Harvester death in 1970, this horse was unofficially known as Mr. Ed, which led to him being reported as such following his own death. Young said when the Oklahoma horse death story came out in 1979, he knew it was not the real Mr. Ed, but did not have the heart to shatter their illusions. That the horse being memorialized was not the real Ed. He believes it was a horse used for early publicity photos. Whether or not it was the real Bamboo Harvester, the horse was laid to rest in 1970 on the farm at Snodgrass Farm in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, with no marker. It wasn't until summer 1990 when Mr. Ed fans of Oklahoma dedicated a standing granite gravestone to honor the grounds of his grave, though the epitaph uses his stage name and image as Mr. Ed and does not mention his death date of 1970. The grave of America's favorite talking horse, Mr. Ed, is just north of Tahlequah on a farm in a peaceful field. The show ran from 1961 to 1966 on CBS and was beloved for many years afterwards. Mr. Ed ended up in Oklahoma after the show ended and his Hollywood career was over. He lived on the farm he is buried on for the rest of his days until he passed away in 1979. People now travel to see this loving tribute to him and the large stone mural that is at this gravesite. It features the iconic image of Ed's head through the barn door from the show's opening titles and even makes use of the TV show's logo. The memorial was dedicated on August 26, 1990 and has been on the grounds ever since, although it has occasionally fallen over.
Unless he has something to say. A horse is a horse, of course, and this one will talk to him, his voice is hoarse. You never heard of a talking horse? Well, listen to this. I am Mr. Ed.
Leave a white heart in the comments in remembrance of them. And as always, be loving and caring, my good beans.